Hello and welcome to Who Watches Who, a Doctor Who podcast with me, Matthew, and as always, I am joined with...
Yes, this is Scott, and I really had to turn down the volume there because you came in way too loud in that hello. Like we were having a casual conversation just before that, and then suddenly you yelled hello from the rooftops. Hello.
It's called, turning it on. You've got to enter presenter mode. So
It scared me.
Project my voice more, and well, it's fine. I'll just go back. I'll just mutter this entire podcast. Welcome to the muttering podcast. We're looking at War Games today, episodes 1 and 2 of the War Games, which is a story that I have never seen and still haven't finished. So I've only seen these first 2 episodes. So all of my knowledge will be based purely off these 2 episodes, because we go through experiencing this for the next 5 weeks. Is that how long it's going to take us? Yes, that's 10 divided by 2.
We'll be finished this in 7 weeks because we're kind of taking 2 weeks off to do other things like the news and a special April Fool's episode, which we're not announcing yet.
But 5 weeks total. If you were to look at 5 episodes, really, what I should be saying, 5 episodes.
Yeah.
So I've only seen episodes 1 and 2, and so far this story is the worst story of all time.
We just came off of Dragonfire, so
yeah, it's not that bad. It's fine. I was just a bit bored watching it, honestly. But maybe it'll pick up, maybe it won't. That's a problem for next week. This week we are looking at on the day this episode came out, which was the 19th of April, 1969, a Saturday, and at the time of recording, 54 years, 10 months, and 15 days ago, because we are rapidly approaching the 55th anniversary of this story, which is the entire reason we are visiting it for the first time, and covering it on the podcast. Could you guess, Scott? This is all I've got for on this day, because it was not a lot going on, so I just was like, let's go straight. We'll just talk about the movie, because it's an interesting movie. It's only the US. I say it's interesting because it's like a movie I'm vaguely aware of. If you could guess which movie this is, which is number 1 at the box office on this day in cinemas, I would be so insanely impressed with your extremely niche knowledge of number 1 movies that came out in 1969, because I would never in 1,000 years guess this film, but maybe you'll be able to figure it out.
Could you maybe move your head a little bit so I can see it in the reflection? Is that possible?
No.
Oh, okay.
And most of that gets cut off anyway by you, so not even the people watching at home can see.
Well, I see a bunch of white dots.
Yeah. I'll give you. Okay, white dots. Okay, maybe more stripes than dots, but there are stripes. It's about a car. It's a movie about a car, a very, very famous car. You would know the car from a really bad 2005 remake or reimagination or whatever.
Oh, is it Herbie?
It is. Yes, it is the Love Bug.
Yes. I've seen every single Herbie movie, I believe.
Have you really?
I believe, because as a kid I had every movie on like one box set, but it was a pirated box set. So my mom and I would go through every Herbie movie, and I do not remember. Herbie goes bananas at some point. That's like all I remember.
Interesting.
Terrible franchise.
I am impressed that you have Lindsay Lohan's Herbie fully loaded, memorized in your head, but well done. It was, of course, The Love Bug, as it was known when it came out in 1969. It's not a movie I have seen. I think I have like these like feverish nightmare memories of Herbie Fully Loaded, so I must have seen it at least like once as a kid. But I have no emotional connection to this series at all.
Hold on here. So there's 6 films in the franchise. There's The Love Bug, Herbie Rides Again, Herbie Goes to Monte Carlo, Herbie Goes Bananas, and then there's Disney's The Love Bug, and then there's Herbie Fully Loaded. So I guess it got rebooted twice. Once in 1997. Interesting.
Yeah.
Wow. Bruce Campbell is in the 1997 version. That's got to be worth a watch.
Sure, I'm sure it will. It has a solid. It's directed by Peyton Reed. Jesus. Ant-Man.
Who watches The Love Bug when?
Never. As I said, I have no connection with this franchise, and I refuse to build one. Absolutely.
Holy shit. One of them is directed by Bill Bixby, who played the Incredible Hulk in the 70s.
Oh, interesting.
Sorry, there was a TV show in 1982, and one of the episodes was directed by him. That's insane. There's too much Herbie. When are we going to cover all the Herbie?
What is this connection that Herbie managed to create with people in the end of the 20th century there? For all the way from the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s, even into the early 2000s, there has always been Herbie. There was no Herbie in the 2010s. None that I'm aware of, and society has crumbled.
A lot of people consider like David Bowie to be the death of David Bowie to be like the last of the fabric of society being held together, but the death of Herbie movies, I think,
is Herbie Fully Loaded destroyed society. That is true. God damn, Lindsay Lohan, she's ruined us. But that is all I've got for on this day. Very brief little look into Herbie, the little car that could. So, Scott, could you take us into the writer's corner?
Well, I can take you to this day in history, because in the year...
Oh my god.
On April 19th, 2024, famous YouTubers, Who Watches Who, finish their look into the War Games. So that's going to be like 10 years from now. It's a while. There's so much stuff to cover.
It's going to feel like it.
I didn't pick this. I didn't realize it until like today that we're finishing it on the anniversary. So it's going to be fun.
Yeah.
So quickly to just talk about season 6 as a whole, and I don't mean Matt Smith's season 6, I obviously mean Patrick Troughton's season 6. Season 6 was a complete shit show. Like, every story suffered this season, and the ratings suffered, and there was even talks about cancelling the show after the War Games. So season 6 was a nightmare, let's just put it bluntly. The first story was commissioned for 6 episodes, but they struggled to extend the plot, so it then became 5 episodes. The second story, The Mind Robber, had to become a 5-part story instead of a 4-part story, and to do this, they cut down episodes by 5 minutes, so each episode was like 20 minutes long rather than 25 minutes, which roughly works out to the same length as 4 standard episodes. So they really cheated here. The third story, The Invasion, went from being 6 episodes long to 8 episodes long. And the fifth story, The Seeds of Death, Terrence Dicks had to rewrite most of the episodes. With his 6th story, The Space Pirates, this was a quick replacement for a story that fell apart, so it was written at the last moment. And with the War Games, the season was never supposed to end with a 10 episode story. It was supposed to end with a 6-part story and a 4-part story. But again, you're noticing a theme here where every episode just falls apart last minute. The penultimate 6-part story was originally going to be a third Yeti story called The Laird of McCrimmon. However, disagreements between the writers and the script editor resulted in it being tossed away. Robert Holmes was then brought in to do the 6-parter, but the 4th story of the season suddenly fell apart, so they decided to replace it with Robert's script called The Croutons, meaning that the 6 episodes now needed another new writer. So Malcolm Hulke was then commissioned to do the 6-parter, which was called Doctor Who and the Impersonators, but by mid-November of 1968 the story ran into problems. The same thing with the final 4-part story. Derek Sherwin, who was the producer at the time, was going to write it, but by mid-November it also ran into problems. So the quick solution was, instead of doing 2 new stories, let's just do a 10-parter and get Terrence Dicks involved. Get Terrence Dicks in the writing room and write a 10-part story, which sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, that's ridiculous. I can't even fathom, trying to come up with a 10-part, especially like a classic Who story specifically.
Yes.
So you have to fall into all of the tropes and the staging and the budget that season 6 Doctor Who has to stretch that into 10-parters. Oh my Christ!
Yes. He was Derek Sherwin was basically like, we need a 10-part story like yesterday. And obviously Terrence Dicks couldn't write all 10 parts on his own that quickly, especially. So he asked Malcolm Hulke for help, and Malcolm Hulke, of course, we've talked about it before. He's the guy who goes on to create the Sea Devils and the Silurians. Yes. And, we've covered the Sea Devils. Really great story. We both loved it.
So much have we covered the Sea Devils. I shudder at their name now.
So the interesting thing, Hulke and Terrence Dicks actually met because Hulke was a landlord, and in 1961 or 1962, Terrence Dicks took a room in one of his flats. So this is a weird kind of situation where you become best friends with your landlord and then go on to be writing partners with him, which doesn't sound like it happens every day.
That's the key to not getting evicted. That's the secret. That's how you don't get evicted.
And then the two guys became fast friends and wrote episodes of The Avengers together, because the show always pops up. We need to do an episode someday.
Yeah.
So Hulke was only officially contracted to this episode of Doctor Who in late December of 1968. And this story started shooting in March 1969, and they needed basically most of the script done by then, which is madness. Work on the script itself only started on January 6th, 1969, when it was officially got commissioned. The director was to join in February, so he really needed to rush and give him enough of a story to work on. They apparently wrote an episode every 2 or 3 days, which is quite a lot.
Damn. Yeah, they were cooking.
They finished the script around mid-March, just in time for the location filming, and studio filming started in April. And this is kind of one of the things we need to remember when we're watching these Patrick Troughton stories, is each episode was only shot the week before it aired.
That's insane. That's insane. That's how we do this podcast. And we barely make it. We barely manage.
They shot each episode 8 days before it aired, and they only had a 90-minute slot to shoot each episode. So it's basically like shot as a live stage production instead of like a standard TV show we would know today. So that's why it's mostly people just standing around in rooms talking, going into another room, standing around and talking some more, Yeah,
that's insane. God damn.
But yeah, that's the end of my little end of a little writer's corner. Do you want to jump into the War Games Part 1?
Yeah,
nice short one today.
Well, it's okay that it's brief, because we're gonna be in these War Games for quite some time. So it's okay. Plus we just did a 3-hour episode, so yes, let us jump into the War Games episode 1.
Court finds you guilty of espionage. For a crime of this magnitude, there is only one penalty.
But this is ridiculous! You know all the evidence has been twisted against us. Tell them!
The witnesses have given their evidence. The court has reached its verdict. If you've nothing further to say, sentence will be passed.
I most certainly have something further to say. This is all just a mockery. I demand the right to appeal to a higher authority.
There is no right of appeal. You will be executed at dawn tomorrow.
So, the episode begins, as all Classic Who episodes do, with the theme song. And we go from there into the opening credits, which is different from what I'm used to with Classic Who. I wasn't expecting this at all. It's loud explosions and like flashing like the war games, and it's like, oh, this is serious. What the fuck is happening? Like,
yeah, now and again they would do special episode titles like this. They did it in 10th Planet as well, and I can't remember too many other titles, but it's a nice little rare treat just to, you know, have a special title, you know. It's nice.
It gives the episode an aura.
Yeah.
Where it's like, oh shit, this one had opening title, like this is serious. This is a dramatic, serious edge of your burping seat story.
Edge of my burping seat. Okay.
Yeah. That's what
I am surprised that BBC iPlayer did keep it, because that is a seizure and a half waiting to happen.
Yeah, it is just flashing lights.
Because I usually watch TV in the dark. And so when I'm watching the war games, it's like, oh shit, I'm not epileptic, but this will make me.
Yeah, it's. I personally loved it. I thought it was the most interesting thing in these 2 episodes, because we come out from that episode from those opening credits into a puddle, which is a good metaphor for these 2 episodes. As Jamie, Jamie the Doctor and Zoe step out, and Jamie steps into the puddle, and everybody laughs at him because he's got wet shoes. He's got wet shoes. It's hilarious. It is my favorite joke when a person gets wet shoes.
Yes,
very funny. And also Zoe, she's new.
Yeah. We haven't covered her yet. There's a few companions we've left to cover, but it's surprised we're like 3 years into this show.
There's so many companions.
There really is. You know, we're slowly collecting them all. I think there's only like maybe 5 more to collect.
Wow. I wonder who'll be the last. I wonder who's going to be the last companion.
So they filmed this sequence on Brighton Rubbish Dump. This location was also used for the movie Oh, What a Lovely War, which stars Richard Attenborough, which came out the same year. The director loved that movie and thought, hey, it's also set in World War One. It looks convincing enough. Let's just use it on Doctor Who. It's cheap, you know. It's cheap to just go out in the rubbish dump and just film a war sequence. And apparently there were rats as big as cats.
Oh my god.
And apparently the director said, yeah, we're not telling the makeup ladies about these rats because they would want to move the TARDIS, and, you know, we would want to move location, and just that would be a lot of hassle moving the TARDIS, so we're keeping it secret.
Until one comes scuttling out halfway through a shot. But, so, Zoe. Who is Zoe? I don't know anything about Zoe. Who is she? Is she just generic companion? I'm gonna scream lady.
No, she's actually a scientist from the year 20. She's from the future. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
she's a scientist from the future.
All the way in the year 20.
Yes, 20 years in the future. But it's cool. It's a cool dynamic to have one companion from the past and another companion from the future, which is something I wish we'd do in modern Who, because I'm tired of all these. Oh, it's a companion from modern London. from current year London, or current year wherever they were from in Jodie's era. Sheffield, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that is fun. I don't know how much. I like the old, like the past companion and one from the future. I like that as an idea, but I don't know, like,
how impactful it is when you have the Doctor thrown in. Like surely him and I suppose it just adds that dynamic where they can have a laugh together while Jamie's like, oh, I don't know what that means, and then they're like, ha ha ha, Jamie, you're so fucking stupid.
He is fucking stupid, because what's the next thing he does in this episode, Matthew?
Pokes himself on some barbed wire, seemingly on purpose, because he's walking up to it, he's like, ooh, pointy, stabs his thumb, he's like, ow! Like, what? Surely even if you had never seen barbed wire before in your life, you would be like, that looks sharp. I don't want to touch. Like, you've seen sharp objects before.
Yeah, but this is Jamie we're talking about, though. So the Doctor, you know, obviously Jamie and the Doctor are dating. The Doctor just loves his himbos.
They then they discover like a helmet or something, and they're like, what the fuck is this about? And then suddenly bombs start going off in a pretty fun little action sequence. It's, again, you know, with the tied this with the opening credits helps build an aura where you're like, what the fuck? This is like, what is happening right now? This doesn't feel like a campy regular episode of Doctor Who. There's a bit where they're like sheltering down, hiding in the dirt, that I think it's just the camera angle, but it doesn't look like Zoe's there. It looks like they've stuck a doll there. Just the way that the dirt hits the back of her jacket, it's like, that doesn't look like there's a person under that coat.
Well, maybe that's likely because Patrick Troughton was terrified of the explosions, which, I mean, is fair enough. It's classic Doctor Who. You don't have the health and safety you would have these days.
Yeah, they're just lobbing bombs.
like apparently there's a moment where Patrick Troughton wanted to see what the explosions were like before they actually shot the scene. I mean, he's just standing around and an explosion goes off in the distance and he gets covered in mud and he's like, see, now that's why I wanted to watch the explosions, you know, just in case. These explosions cost £120, which is £2,500 today, and it's pretty awesome. I do love explosions.
Who doesn't? They are, and there's a lot of them, and they're very loud. But I really enjoyed them. It felt dangerous and it felt scary. And then a random lady shows up, and she's like, what are you doing here? That's weird that you're here. I'm not worried about the bombs.
Yes, this is Lady Jennifer, played by Jane Sherwin, who is the wife of the producer. And she made an effort on the set to make sure everyone knew she was the wife of the producer, just in case, you know.
Interesting.
You know, because before, or sometimes, like, when you're in that situation, cast members try to hit on you or whatever, and it makes things awkward when that's apparently her reasoning for this. And also, it's just, you don't want to discover halfway through a production that a bit of nepotism is involved in the casting, and that would make a hostile working environment. Whereas if you knew immediately, then fair enough, you know.
I guess. I mean,
that's kind of her reasoning.
Sure. I mean, you know, I feel like you should be upset about nepotism even if you were pre-warned about it.
But yeah, the actress is actually driving the ambulance when she enters the screen, which is kind of wild to me because there's explosions going off all around her, and this ambulance doesn't have doors, so like all the debris is going inside the ambulance. It's flying left, right, and center.
1969. It's
nice.
They had not a care in the world.
Yeah, just, oh god, imagine being on a film set in like 1969. What a nightmare.
I'm sure it was an exhilarating experience. I mean, I'm sure. But some nondescript soldiers show up. I assume they are German soldiers, but I can't really tell because they're not really wearing a uniform per se, more a really shit pointy hat and a gas mask.
Yes, they pop into frame and go, "Are you my mummy?" But yeah, they must teleport in because nobody notices them coming up. There's no sound of footsteps. They just appear out of nowhere.
Ninja soldiers. They are ninjas, and they are soldiers.
And also Patrick Troughton does the classic thing of putting his hands all the way up as he's surrendering here.
Yes, it's fantastic. When they get brought into the car, and it's around about here that the story loses interest for me, which is when the plot starts being boring British Army generals talking in their boring British way with their stiff upper lips, moving about.
Yeah.
And I was zoned out so fast when this stuff started coming in. Like,
Yeah, the problem with this episode is that every conversation has to be shown, which, is fair enough if you're doing 10 episodes. That's fair enough.
yeah, you stretch everything. This guy's having a phone call talking about ammo. Fucking include it. Like, but yeah, it's they inform the. How do they even? Because I think I've missed. Oh, they get stopped by some guards. Mm-hmm. And then taken out, like, freed out the back and swapped around. That feels so, like, weirdly convoluted. That feels like, why not just have the British soldiers discover them immediately? I get runtime. I realize that's the answer. But, like,
yeah, you're right.
Because the German soldiers don't do anything other than, I guess, get them in a car. But you could get the British soldiers be like, "Your guys are civilians. Get in my car." Like,
yeah, I know. When I was making notes for this episode, I'm like, enemy soldiers. Oh yeah, they pop up for 1 second and then they get written out. Like, we could, like, if you want to pad time, make like 15 minutes of them trying to escape the enemy soldiers, and be like, "Oh, thank God, we're away from them," and then realize that the British Army is more
British
dangerous.
Soldiers. Yeah. There's much. I mean, that's kind of what we always come to when it comes to the filler. It's like, you could have done this more creatively.
Yeah.
You could have come up with a better. You chose the laziest option and probably the cheapest one.
Yeah.
But the General Man gets informed about the doctor and that's presence. That they found civilians, and we then go with the Doctor and Jamie, where he's explaining that this is the war to end wars. It's World War One, and he's telling him what all these trenches are. And whenever anybody describes or calls World War One the war to end war or end wars, which is what it was referred to at the time, I just feel unbridled rage and agony for just knowledge of what came after, because god damn, it's cool stuff.
Even since this episode, like, all the wars that have happened, fuck, what a great time. I wouldn't normally notice these kind of stuff because I usually don't know these kind of actors, but the Major here is played by Terence Baylor, who would frequently pop up in Terry Gilliam films like The Ruttles, Life of Brian, and Brazil, and he's even in the first Harry Potter movie. And I only mention this because we were talking about Life of Brian a few weeks ago, and now here's an actor from the Life of Brian.
It's a sign from the universe. You need to watch that movie.
I do, yes.
It is genuinely very good. But the general guy decides that the best course of action is to phone up General Smythe, and Smythe is a great name choice to choose because it's so close to being Smith, which is like a normal regular name, but it's slightly wrong. It's Smythe. There's something unnatural about it, which is, this man is like an alien or whatever. So I appreciate, I don't know if it was done intentionally or like maybe this guy just knew somebody called Smythe, but I'm able to project that sort of idea onto it and make it work in my head. So I do like it. As far as names go.
What's interesting, he's phoning General Smythe because he suspects the Doctor and companions to maybe be spies. And there's a moment here where we first get introduced to Smythe where he's just sitting around and he seems to be waiting for his cue, because obviously this was pretty much shot live. So he probably is just waiting for his cue, because that's like a good 10 seconds of silence.
Yeah, what I like as well is this is like such a strangely organized room.
Yeah.
Like you've got just this big empty space in the middle, and the table's right up against the back of the wall, and you can just see his legs dangling there. Like, it's like he's like sitting in a classroom or something. It's very strange.
Yeah, it's not even like a proper, like a proper desk with drawers or
No,
anything.
it's like a
it's
pop-up
just-
table.
It probably is. That's probably all they
Yeah.
could afford.
But then we get a very British general conversation with people talking like this. As another British general comes in, and they both have the stiffest upper lips known to mankind. Before Smythe excuses himself, being informed about the civilian presence. He excuses himself into his room, to just have some alone time and then check behind his painting. Before he's like about to open his painting when a guy bursts in and he's like, "Don't you better fucking knock, gee, stay out my room, mom." Then he opens up the painting and we discover that there is a future gadget, a very high-tech futurism. It's straight up the most 60s retro sci-fi stuff I've seen. Love it. Love stuff like that where it's just like a big ball and it's white, and then you got a dial and it makes like a clicking noise. Excellent.
So this is one of those acronyms where it's like, this isn't World War One after all. It's it's what we covered with the Time Meddler, where the Doctor discovers the tape. Like it's always fun to go into a story and thinking, oh, it's just going to be a World War One story, and then suddenly, oh shit, it's not.
Yeah, no, it is a lot of fun.
And also, the other character's name is also called Ransom, which is a great name for a character.
That's an interesting name. And I do like broadly the things that this episode set up, and things like that. I just wish it wasn't presented so boring. That's my big gripe with this episode, is like I am like falling asleep watching it.
My issue is I'm not a fan of like World War One stuff, so I get bored by it. But every time there's a sci-fi thing to it, like, oh, these characters can't remember where they are, I get interested, and it's like, oh, we're something interesting is going on. And then 5 minutes later, we have the same conversation about how we don't remember where they are. And it's like, okay, now I'm bored again. A lot of repetition in this one.
There is, but I don't know what else you could expect with a 10-part story. With Classic Who, like, they pad out 4-episode stories. That like you can watch a 4-part story and be like, this could have been an episode.
We just covered Dragonfire and they pad out one of those episodes for like 10 minutes. It's insane.
So a 10-part is just like a living nightmare. But what they've got is interesting. It is a good story overall. It just suffers because it has to be stretched into 10.
Brings me to the point. The rumor is that this year they are doing the same thing they did with the Daleks last year by colorizing this story. That's the current rumor, so that's going to be interesting to see this story condensed down to like an 18-minute story.
I don't know if we really talked about it much, but the Daleks colorization I was pleasantly surprised by. I think we might have talked about it on a news or something.
Yeah, we did.
I was surprised at how like mixed the opinions were on that.
There was a couple of things on it. Yeah, there was a couple of things wrong with it. Like the score was too overbearing at times, and some of the editing was too quick. I think it could have been like 5 or 10 minutes longer. But other than that, it was really good, and I look forward to seeing more of it. I hope they do the War Games. I hope that's not just a rumor. But we'll see.
I hope they do the War Games as well, and like the like really wacky bit in the Daleks when it's the montage. I hope the entire War Games edit is like that, where it's just like the whole like 90-minute montage. I think it'd be spectacular.
That's one of the things I think about often, like just like a fan project, cutting down each story of Doctor Who and condensing it. Like some people do that with One Piece. You can go online and find One Piece episodes edited down by like 50%. Sounds like a fun hobby.
It sounds like it would take a lot of time. Jamie and General Man get into a very heated argument before being escorted away, as they are accused of being spies and soldiers for the enemy. And not much really happens. It's a lot of it's just a lot of the same.
There's a moment
how
where...
does the scene end? There was like a really
yeah.
cliffhanger to this scene.
The lieutenant basically turns to the camera and says, "You know what the nickname is given to General Smythe? The Butcher."
Da, da, da. It's fantastic.
And also that fade to black serves as a recording break, and also as like a built-in commercial break if you ever want to sell these episodes to America. So it's really cool sometimes to watch these episodes get made, because it's interesting.
It is interesting, but it's a very fun little dun 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 moment. I really enjoyed it.
Like we get these mini cliffhangers in these episodes, which is So I guess the story has like 20 cliffhangers or something like that.
Oh my god! I didn't even consider the amount of peril the Doctor's going to be in. The amount of times he's going to die right at the end of every episode.
We're going to have to rank every cliffhanger at the end of this and see which ones. I bet you were all shit. I don't remember a single cliffhanger, to be honest with you, apart from the end of this episode.
Yeah, the ones in this episode. I don't even remember what the cliffhanger to episode 2 is, but the cliffhanger to episode 1 is bad.
Yeah.
But at least it's memorable. The episode continues onwards as the Doctor is marched around. I'm trying to remember where we actually left off. Yes, they get told to march out because they're going to be put on trial with this commander guy. And we get introduced to who this guy is, this dastardly evil Mr. Captain fucking General Smythe, where I'm just going to go to the first scene I remember of importance, which is when he comes out of the room and puts on his big silly glasses to brainwash one of his soldiers into doing something, because he's got these tiny little fucking dumbass spectacles that are magnifying glasses, which I guess like the logic behind it, if I'm going to headcanon it, is you need to, or maybe perhaps real canon, I'm not sure, but you need to be able to like look deeply in his eyes, and they act as like magnifying glasses so that you can see right into his eyes and get hypnotized by those gorgeous baby blues, and it's really dumb, and they do it twice in a row just in case you missed it.
Oh, they do it 3 times in this episode, I think.
They do it 3 times, but they do it twice in the same scene.
But yeah, the reason why he has to hypnotize Ransom here is because Ransom walked into the room. It was empty. There's no way Smythe could have left the chateau. But, he gets hypnotized into believing, he just found him asleep,
Yeah. What's so strange about it? Is the second time he does it, when he's asking the guy, like, how you've known each other for a long time. How long have you been friends? Where did you meet? And the guy can't place it, and he sticks the glasses on. He's like, school, you met at school. There's like 3-4 other people around him. Do they not? Are they too brainwashed to not notice?
Yeah, maybe.
And if so, like, why not just keep the glasses on all the time? Like, why are you keeping this facade up?
Maybe part of the hypnosis is that every time you watch hypnosis happen, you just believe it's normal.
You forget.
But they don't need to reiterate it this many times, but I guess they do, because you gotta get those 25 minutes somehow.
Yeah.
Absolute
and what if you were out the room? What if you were making a cup of tea and you're like, oh, what happened? So you're like, oh, it's okay, they're about to do it again. It's like on Teletubbies. It's again.
But there is a funny little bit where when we're being marched around, Jamie keeps stepping on the Doctor's shoes. That was obviously a rehearsal. You can tell when Fraser Hines and Patrick Troughton do stuff, but it's not in the script because they are just so close, and you can just tell those kind of little jokes they can come up with.
They are very fun together. I definitely think so. I think still, racking them up in my head, Jamie and the Second Doctor is probably my favorite classic Doctor companion duo. just from the ones that we've covered. Like Sarah Jane is pretty decent, and I'm sure there was somebody else who's memorable.
You really liked Romana.
Yeah, Romana was good. I did like Romana a lot. So yeah, so you know, those three: Jamie, Romana, Sarah Jane. Those are the three companions that are worth a while.
And you know, the problem is, do they have much of a personality outside of like one or two traits?
No, they have a couple traits, but it's more than anything else.
Like, just imagine you have to do 10 episodes and you have to add in lots of filler. Why not replace that filler with character arcs?
That sounds too difficult. That sounds too difficult. No,
oh yeah, did we mention Ace? I think we forgot to mention Ace.
Yeah, we did. Yeah, Ace is pretty decent.
Yeah.
I don't like her dialogue, but I do like Sophie Aldred.
I mean, you don't like her dialogue just because we've covered Dragonfire, and her dialogue in that episode isn't great. But outside of Dragonfire, she's great.
Yeah. We get a scene, the courtroom scene, the judgment scene, where they are put on trial here. And I can't say this 100% because I don't actually know, because I haven't seen the rest of the story, but I have seen the scene with the Doctor on trial with the Time Lords, which I assume is at the end of this story. So I'm assuming that this is a fun bit of foreshadowing, because a lot of the lines of dialogue they say in this trial sound very similar to what I remember them sounding in the trial of the Time Lords. So I'm assuming this is like a haha, bookended, we did the see it's the same as it was before type dealio, and this is the setup to that, which is very clever, and I like it a lot if that is the case. But again, I have no idea for certain.
This isn't you having an idea on the identity of what's his face?
No,
face.
I assume he might be a Time Lord, just because he has got like the hypnotism we've seen as a Time Lord trait, and I know Time Lords are vaguely involved in this story, but other than that, I have no idea who he is.
Okay.
But this opening Gallifrey scene, Gallifrey scene. This opening courtroom scene reminds me a lot of what I vaguely remember from that Gallifrey trial, which is fun if it's true.
It's been a while since I've watched episode 10. On my rewatch, I only got up to episode 9, and then I completely ran out of time. So it's been a while since I've seen episode 10, so I don't remember the lines specifically, so I can't say whether or not it's identical or anything.
Guess we'll find out in the coming weeks. Guess we'll find out.
This whole scene kind of reminds me of the trial scene in Planet of the Apes, where Charlton Heston is kind of casing his appeal against Dr. Zeus, which great movie.
Charlton Heston is such an old-timey name.
It is.
Nobody born this century is called Charlton Heston.
It's a great name for.
Sure, yeah, it's pretty fun. I really like the performances in this scene as well. This trial scene, I think everybody is really strong. A villain guy, as much as I don't really care about a villain who is like a grumbly British man with a stiff upper lip, like this just puts me to sleep. But he is giving a really decent performance here. Patrick Troughton, fantastic. Solid time as the Doctor, always. I don't think I've ever thought he's given a weak performance in any episode we've covered.
You know, even in the Two Doctors, when he's so close to his death, he's given a great performance. Like, the guy always knows how to turn it on. You know, he's awesome.
Yeah. He was, yes.
Just like the fan, you know, he knows how to turn it on, just like the fan he fucked when he died. You remember that story?
Yes, I do remember that story. That what a guy. What a guy. But the Doctor and that kind of just, they get paraded around a bunch. The ending of this trial is really dumb, where they're like, go stand on the other side of the room. And then the villain hypnotizes everybody, and then he's like, okay, bring them back in. You're guilty. Ha 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 ha. And then I don't understand what happens. They were like, Zoe, but you're okay. You can stay if you want. You can just stay here and hang out. Like, that's chill.
I don't really get it myself, because she's kind of sentenced to like 10 years of prison for espionage or something. I can't remember.
Yeah.
Jamie is is labeled a traitor because he left.
Because they think he's a deserter. Yeah.
And then obviously the Doctor gets the most severe sentence because he's the leader. And when he gets sentenced to death, Patrick Troughton kind of grabs his throat because, obviously that's what you think of getting hung.
Yeah. But he doesn't get hung. He gets shot. And he dies at the end of this episode. We'll get that. Very shocking.
Well, he did get hung before he died.
Yeah, so the Doctor, when he gets taken to his cell as well, because he's kind of figuring out that people are brainwashed, he's like, hey, how long have you been in the army or whatnot? And the guy's like, oh, I don't know. I don't really remember that. And then everybody decides it's bedtime and they go to sleep and there's dead silence for like 10 seconds. Like, it's a long time where there's no noise.
This episode keeps reiterating the fact that people can't remember where they are, because there was a scene we kind of skipped where the Lieutenant and Lady Jennifer kind of talks about, I can't remember where my hospital is. And it's like, that should be a bit more troubling when you act, They're kind of
they're
treating
hypnotized, they're brainwashed, so they're like, oh, I don't remember. Isn't that so weird? Sort of deal. But yeah, the opening part of this episode where they're like, oh, it's World War One, and then the second part of this episode when they're like, oh, but maybe it's not. They keep but maybe it's not for like 15 minutes. And it does, not to say that the scenes are particularly bad, there's just nothing more to say about them because they are so repetitive and they go over the same ground,
Like the Doctor and his companions get marched into this room 4 times in this episode. It's too much. It's way too much. But before the second Doctor says goodbye to Zoe, going back a little bit more, the second Doctor gives her a kiss in the forehead, which is sweet. And that's not what Doctor Who would do years later, the whole no hanky-panky in the TARDIS rule that John Nathan Turner introduced. So it's I think this might be the first kiss between a Doctor and companion, if we're being technical here.
I don't know. It depends on if... like maybe somebody... Like, what you're counting as a kiss, because like maybe somebody got kissed on the hand at some point, or like a kiss, like a peck on the cheek if they were in France or something, I don't know. I haven't seen every episode from season 1 to season 6, and I don't keep track of did they kiss in this episode, yes or no. I
do, so...
I don't know. Yeah.
I wonder if there's an article out there saying every kiss in Doctor Who.
There will be soon. Zoe is pretty cool as far as companions go for this era, because she gets up in the middle of the night and sneaks into the bad guy's office and discovers that he's gone and steals his keys that he keeps tucked under his pillow when he goes to bed at night.
Yeah, Smythe decides to leave he keeps the keys underneath his pillow and sleeps above it, which is fair enough, because if MD comes in, he knows. He would know. Yeah. But he leaves the keys in the room, which makes no fucking sense. Why does he not just put it in his pocket? It's bullshit.
Maybe it's one of those things where, like, normally he does. Normally he always sticks them in his pocket, but just this once, he just forgot them. So it's always, you always end up, you're like, oh, how did I forget my keys? I always put them in the bowl. They're not in the fucking bowl. Why did I do that? This is the one time where his mind just slipped. He's like, oh, I forgot the keys, and it's the worst possible time, because of course he forgets them when Zoe's kicking about.
It's like that one time me and my mum forgot to lock the door. And then, like, a junkie from, like, next door walks into our house. What a moment that was. Freaky as hell.
It's exactly like that one time that I remember happening, because I was there for it. The Zoe goes looking for the Doctor, and there's a fun little bit of false tension when the Doctor's hiding behind a door because he thinks it's like a guard or something coming, and he's like, "Oh," and you're like, "Oh shit, is he gonna jump and attack on Zoe?" But he jumps down and he goes, "Zoe!" straight away, like he knew it was her. It's this fun little moment, and again, watching that, I was like, God, Patrick Troughton has so much energy. Like,
He
just
does.
that little jump, that little hop down. Never in a million fucking years would you see Hartnell do that. He would die. He would straight up stop existing.
And you know, it's those little bursts of energy where you can really see Matt Smith inside of Patrick Troughton, because obviously Matt Smith took a lot of inspiration from Patrick Troughton, and it's just his energy. It's the way he kind of like rubs his hands together and stuff like that.
Yeah,
I love it. It's so good.
Yeah, for sure can see that. But the Zoe gives the Doctor a set of keys, the set of keys that she stole, and then they're like, haha, we got away, it's time to go. And but clever word choice, because the guard that's standing there is like, you're right, it is time to go. Go all the way to the execution bit where we're gonna shoot you with guns. And they take the Doctor away. They line him up on a pole as we push in. There's some really nice camera work in this episode. And both stories, actually. I haven't mentioned so far. There's a really fun fucking zoom-in bit at one point.
When Classic Who does a snap zoom like that, it's fucking fantastic. I love snap zooms.
Yeah.
I miss snap zooms in movies.
There's a fantastic one in Django Unchained. There's a brilliant snap zoom.
I need to watch that movie.
Gotta love Tarantino. But yeah, there's a fun snap zoom. There's just some nice cinematography. There's some real movement and motion to the camera that they don't often do with Classic Who, where a lot of the time, you know, it is those static shots. So I just thought I'd mention them there because we haven't mentioned them. But anyway.
This episode is really well directed. There's a scene we kind of skipped over where the Lieutenant and Lady Jennifer, are talking about very erased memories, and the director made a decision to, you know, how usually the lights are on like the ceilings, and that's how a scene is shot. They put the lights down on the ground because that scene is supposed to be taking place inside of a bunker where there is no overhead light. So that's smart direction, you know, which is kind of hard to judge because it's so, you know, it's shot like a live play, but you know, it's sometimes hard to spot little flourishes like that, but it's cool.
Yeah, there is some nice parts. But the Doctor gets put up against this pole. The firing squad is there, ready, aim, fire, bang, bang, bang. The Doctor flinches. Roll credits. How many times have we seen this exact cliffhanger?
Oh yeah,
like,
I can name you
the
one.
Exact one where he's about to get shot. Yeah,
I can name you exact same thing. It's the moment in Caves of Androsani, the end of episode 1, where he and Perry are sentenced to, you know, execution, and that's the cliffhanger. But you actually see the bullets land in that one, which is really cool. Like, go back to our Caves of Androsani episode. We loved that story.
It was fun.
And also, like, the Doctor is a victim this entire episode. He's like, yeah, I'm sure we can explain this to Smythe. I'm sure we can. He might be a reasonable person. And then he's like the worst person ever.
Yeah, he hasn't seen his goofy glasses. He hasn't figured those out yet. But yeah, the Doctor dies, and that was the end of the show Doctor Who. They cancelled it from here, and nobody really spoke of it again. And it's just this weird little blip in British TV history, so...
But when I watched this for the first time, it must have been 2013, and I'm watching every episode, every Regeneration episode, because I have a big box set that came out around the time. And when they mentioned the fact that he's going to be executed, I'm like, oh, is that how John Pertwee enters the show? So when, you know, it happens at the end of episode 1, I'm like, no, okay, never mind. Never mind. It would be interesting just to have John Pertwee appear next week.
That would be interesting. Also, how strange is it that season 6 has got so many episodes? It has 2 pages.
Yeah,
on BBC iPlayer. That's insane.
This was back. I think this season has 44 episodes.
Jesus Christ, that's ridiculous. But that does bring us to the end of episode 1 of the War Games. You might be asking yourself, what's the plot? What's going on? They're in a different time. They think it's a war, but it's not the war. It took us 20 minutes to get there.
Yeah.
It's a well-paced story. But
this is definitely something. I think this episode is going to last like 5 minutes in the colorized version at the end of the year.
Yeah, it'll
nothing
be a real
happens.
brief setup. It'll be they land there, they're like, oh, it's World War One, and then the guy will hypnotize somebody. Oh, it's not World War One. Then they'll do the trial scene. Then that's it.
There's nothing going on in this one, and we want to see if there's anything going on in the second one. Spoilers, not really.
There isn't. Yeah. But yes, let us dive in now immediately into the War Games, episode 2.
Who the blazes are you?
Don't you address me like that, sir. This is disgraceful. I shall make a complaint directly to the minister himself.
Minister? I don't understand. Who are you?
I'm the examiner from the War Office. I am here to inspect the military prisons. This young lady is my secretary. Well, you were expecting us, surely.
Well, there must be some mistake. I mean, can I see your identification papers?
How dare you! You sent no car to meet us on our arrival, and now you add insult to injury by doubting my credentials. You know who I am, sir!
Well, I'm terribly sorry and all that. It's probably my adjutant's fault. Would you care for some tea?
We are here to inspect the security arrangements of the prison. I suggest we stop wasting time and get on with it.
Episode 2 begins with the execution of the Doctor. However, turns out that Doctor Who's a big liar. It's a big liar of a show. It's a show where they just lie. They just lie about the events that are happening. Because if you remember the cliffhanger in episode 1, the Doctor gets shot. You hear 3, 4, 5, 6 gunfires. They all basically in rapid succession, almost simultaneously, as the Doctor is gunned down by this firing squad. However, as we join into episode 2, there is only one bullet fired, and it is from a sniper from across the street. We were lied to by the show. This cannot stand.
You should write to the BBC and complain, I think.
I think so. Yeah, it's pretty upsetting stuff. But that's how they get out of the cliffhanger this way. It was just the Doctor wasn't the one that got shot, which I feel like is the way they get out of the cliffhanger every single time.
Yep, and it makes cliffhangers extremely predictable. You know, when the cliffhanger is, oh yeah, this guy is gonna die.
It's like, no, he's not.
Yeah. Great, classic Who. Maybe it shouldn't have been enforced, these cliffhangers. Maybe we should have just been...
It adds to the vibe. It creates it into a more whole package where it's like, of course it's classic, of course classic Who ends with the Doctor about to die, and of course he never does. It's part of the experience. And it's terrible. It's a terrible experience. But that we see General Smythe, who is in his room, and we hear a familiar sound, a sound of a TARDIS, perhaps that is, I don't know, perhaps it is, perhaps it isn't, who knows, but one of his fellow soldier men that are under him as sergeants, let's say, come in without knocking, even though he was yelled at. He was told explicitly, fucking knock on the door. And clearly, he just chose to ignore this.
Clearly something has gone wrong with the hypnotism here, because he is not listening, something that basic. Maybe he should be shot.
And he sees and he's like, what the fuck is that? What is that thing that you've got over there? And so Guy puts on glasses and hypnotizes him. I'm going to give it a pass because this is episode 2. This is a new episode, so we need to be reintroduced to the idea that this guy can hypnotize people. This is a fun way of doing it while also revealing a little bit more about who he is as a character. I do question why he didn't. Maybe they answer this later on, but they haven't answered it so far where I am as to why he doesn't stick a chameleon circuit on his TARDIS to stop it just being a giant fucking blob in his office that clearly looks like an alien ship, and not just his desk or a cupboard. You know, like why does it, and we know like in the Time Meddler that you can get chameleon circuit working TARDISes. This guy's just a big idiot.
Well, it doesn't get explained, but you can kind of put two and two together of why he doesn't have a chameleon circuit here. So it kind of does get explained by the fact it doesn't get explained, if that makes sense.
Okay. Well, as I said, I don't know fully. This is just an observation from watching these 2 episodes.
But the design of the ship is pretty cool. I kind of dig it. You know, it's a classic 60s retroism, you know. I dig it.
Yeah, it's just a big, like, weird beam. The door is strange where it, like, slides out and then, like, closes in again. It's kind of fun. Jamie in prison gets to meet his best friend for about a scene, and it's a rather pointless scene and series of events. With this guy who is a redcoat from the 1700s that has arrived here in World War I. So something is definitely amiss, but he's been thrown into the jail until they can figure out what to do with him. He's scared of Jamie to begin with because Jamie's a Scotsman, and they are apparently warring in the Highlands during the 1700s when this guy is alive. So he thinks Jamie is going to kill him. They have a bit of a back and forth for a while. And it's okay, but they basically come up with a daring plan that we'll get to later. We have got...
Yeah, this whole sequence of events is just purely written to pass time.
Out
like,
for ages.
Terrence Dicks just explains it as, we needed to fill some time. We needed some action earlier on in the episode, so this is your action that's coming up later on, you know. And we basically just end up not needing this scene, so I don't be surprised if it's not in the colorized version, because, you know, we'll get into it when we cover it, but... The Doctor basically goes up and asks to see Jamie, and then he sees Jamie.
Okay.
So that's all you need for the colorized version. He asks to see Jamie, and then he sees Jamie. Jamie doesn't need to escape because he would have been let out anyway. That's what Terrence Dicks calls like a loop story, where, you know, the events just happen without needing that whole subplot.
It's Indiana Jones, where the plot of the movie happens whether Indiana Jones is there or not. You know, like... but we do get some really fun stuff with Patrick Troughton to start this episode. Really, it's my favorite stuff in episode 2, which is Patrick Troughton just bullshitting his way into this prison as he's trying to rescue Jamie. They stop a car and he yells at the driver, like, "Why the fuck didn't you pick us up? We've been waiting here for ages. Go!" And he gets into the guy's office and he's like, "What the fuck is going on? Why are you treating me like shit?" I love it. It's fantastic. It's some top-notch bullshittery from the Doctor. And what I really like, which it's kind of become a crutch with modern Who, is there's no psychic paper, so he has to bullshit his way. He can't just flash the ID card when he gets asked for it, you know.
I actually misremembered him using the psychic paper, because I need to Google this for a few seconds, so give me a second.
Wow, unprofessional man typing away.
Yeah, I misremembered him using the psychic paper because there's a book called World Game, which is also written by Terrence Dicks, which takes place after this story and before the 2 Doctors. So it's kind of like a link between the 2 stories, where the Doctor does get psychic paper and he uses it, the 2nd Doctor does. So for some reason I remembered that fact and I expected it to be in this episode. So yeah, the book was released on the 6th of October 2005.
It's very similar titles as well. I can see how you could get them crisscrossed in your head. It all kind of blows up in the Doctor's face when Jamie is eventually brought into the front, because he's like, you know, "I don't believe you." This general guy basically snaps and he's like, I don't believe at all that you are who you say you are. But before we get into that scene, there is a full-on nothing going on in the rest of the episode, because it's just
Yeah.
these scenes, and they go on for a very long time. So that's
Yeah,
I was scrolling back. I was like, surely I've skipped too far. We're 10 minutes into the episode. Surely I've skipped over something interesting happening. And no, not really. That's basically all the plot points. Is Jamie was locked in prison. They bullshitted their way in. They got in. It was very entertaining, and Patrick Troughton was on fire the entire time.
Yeah.
But there's. As far as like substance goes, it's just like okay, we are snail's pacing this. Like
Yeah, this first half of the episode is very slow, and there's even points where the guy the doctor is talking to is on the phone, and he's like, "Oh my god, this is what happened in the last scene? Wow!" Like he has to reiterate what just happened to like pad the script out a little bit more. There is a scene between Lady Jennifer and the lieutenant here where they're beginning to remember some stuff.
yes, of course.
I can't remember what they talk about remembering, but Lady Jennifer remembers going to the hospital, and then suddenly she remembers not remembering, I guess.
There's this reference to mist keeps coming up.
Yeah.
Everybody's kind of remembering this weird mist, and the guy from the 1700s also talks about a mist. So this mist is reoccurring. Also, Zoe is rapidly climbing up my list of favorite companions. She's low-key fantastic. She's got agency, as we saw in the first episode, where she steals the keys and escapes and is doing stuff. In this episode, she's full psycho. She knocks out that guard with like this most deranged like joy in her eyes. She is just pure living in the moment, absolutely thriving from the chaos as she shatters the pot off the back of his head. Fantastic, love her. Great stuff. Really good introduction to this companion.
Going back to the scene between Lady Jennifer and the lieutenant, the DVD info text points out that the actress keeps pausing to speak her lines in time to the music, which is really fucking bizarre. Apparently the directors, Control Garrity, couldn't hear the music, so they were like, why is she pausing? Does she not remember her lines? But, playing the music live on set, apparently, is what happens here. That's really bizarre, and I don't know if this is something they do for the entire episode, or if it's just the scene to...
I guess it adds more to the like live stage vibe that you've got. Like, if you're like seeing like a live play or a live stage, there's live music to go along with it. Like there's live audio stings and things like that. So maybe it's just a, in for a penny, in for a pound sort of. If we're doing this like theater, let's go all the fucking way.
Because, there is moments where, like, music is played on the set of Doctor Who. Like, the Pandorica opens, they played Indiana Jones music on the set because they wanted Indiana Jones type pace to the scene.
Yeah.
And then Murray Gold obviously records his own score on top of that. So maybe that's what we're doing here. Maybe that's... I don't know. It's really bizarre just to have music blaring on set. That's... 60s television is fascinating because the industry is just so young, and you can tell that we're just figuring stuff out. Like, this is just a live play, which is fascinating to consider that, Doctor Who in 2024 is still the same show, still part of the same continuity, even though like television production has changed a million times since then. It's fascinating.
It is wild. It is wild indeed. So the episode continues on as stuff happens, I guess. My light has died, so sorry for the darker face. No,
that's good actually. I will raise our viewers, True, if they can't see you.
Yeah, but I mean, if someone is like an hour and a half in to this episode, like,
no,
his light went off.
It works like live TV,
Yeah. But the episode has a very fun scene with a lady whose name I don't remember, and
Jennifer.
And Toby Jones, is that his name?
Toby Jones. Yeah, the guy who looks like Toby Jones, the guy who plays Ransom here.
He does look eerily like Toby Jones. They have a really fun scene where she gets him to explain the paperwork to him, and it's really appropriate that it was in this part of this episode because it sets the tone perfectly, because the joy feels like you're filling out paperwork for missing shovels in the front line of World War One. You know, it's like the most tedious shit that nobody cares about because there's bigger things going on. But it's a dull second part to this episode. But I did find it humorous. I took some joy from that, you know.
Yeah, the whole mansplaining of all paperwork.
Hey man, she's showing an interest. He's just explaining his pure passion for paperwork.
But yeah, this whole thing is done as a distraction because the other guy, the lieutenant, is down in the cellar to visit the doctor and the companions, and they're like, yeah, we can show you that, you know, stuff is wrong here, because we can show you General Smythe's bedroom, and we can show you the video phone, which Zoe explains.
She's really receptive to it.
Yeah.
As far as like, you know, like a military like commander who has strict orders to take these what he assumes to be treacherous prisoners away for execution, he's really open to hearing their side of the story. And I just think we should celebrate progressives like that. I think it's worth highlighting how open-minded he is. It's very strange, but I'm going to write it off as the hypnotism shit. Yeah, because it clearly really easily broken this hypnotism. You just have to be like, focus though, like pay attention, Dumbo.
Yeah, because the whole reason we're on the doctor and the companion side is because they realize, oh shit, people aren't remembering what actually happened at the trial. There was not a fair trial and all that shit. And it's like, hypnotism is really bad if it's this easy to break out of it, you know? Like,
yeah, he's really shit. He's really shit at hypnotism.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he even has to wear those big, thick glasses, you know? Like, the master doesn't have to do that.
I mean, the master did wear glasses every time he hypnotized someone in the Demons, if you remember.
Yeah, but that was that was one time. That was one time, and they were nowhere near as thick as this guy's fucking binoculars are. You know.
I mean, wait until you get to Mr. Monocle Man.
Yeah, but they take the guys into Smythe's room, and they open up the painting, and they're like, see, look, there's the screen, and they're like, there's nothing there, and then we get to look at a fucking wooden wall for 5 seconds, which is really interesting. Cinematography is really, really compelling.
They get to show off their best special effect in this episode, and that's not even a joke. This might be the only special effect of the episode, where, you know, one camera's pointed at the blank wall, and the other camera's pointed at the wall with the video phone on it, and they kind of dissolve the two cameras, and that's the special
pretty
effect
spectacular. It's pretty spectacular.
You know, in today's standards, you don't see many movies do this. You know, it's really, really high tech, and it must have been so expensive.
You know, maybe we should see more movies do it, you know? Maybe we should. There's too much CGI. Just bring back this simple fade transition. Easy peasy.
Oh, you know,
everybody was happy.
You know what I miss in Marvel movies and shit like that? I miss people...
Fade transitions.
I know, I miss people in rooms and picking up objects and sitting down on chairs, you know?
That's one of the things, I mean, it's not Marvel, but it is still Disney, with Andor, that I really liked, is they weren't on the fucking screen. They were like, let's build sets and have physical locations where we can bounce light around and have tangibility and texture. It is refreshing.
Yeah, they went to physical locations, shot around physical buildings, and it's like, let's maybe like 10% of the screen in the distance, the far distance, is like CGI futuristic buildings. But yeah, that's the one refreshing thing about Andor. It's such a great show. For that reason, I would say, like, I would not enjoy Andor as much if it's just all shot in the volume.
It would lose something for sure, but I mean, the script was still.
It's like that one episode. It's like that one episode of The Mandalorian where they have a fight with with Boba Fett on like an actual hill, and you're like, holy shit, they went outside. Oh my god. Like, it was just so exciting for that reason.
Yeah. Mandalorian's a strange show. Again, it's so different now than what it was when it started. It's so strange.
Nowadays is just now is just the cameo show, you know. You have to get
It's
Luke
not even the
Skywalker
cameo
in.
show. It's the fucking what's the term for when you sneak a pilot into a different show?
Backdoor pilot.
Yeah, it's backdoor pilot
Yeah.
the show. Every episode is a backdoor pilot for a spin-off. But back to this episode, we get Zoe explains to us the futuristic technology of phoning somebody via like camera. I'm not quite sure how it's supposed to work. So it's like you talk, and they can see you as if you're like in person, but you're not in person. You're talking on the telephone, but they can see. It's really complicated. It sounds too futuristic.
I don't understand it either, and you know, like, I don't see us ever doing something like this in real life. Like, it's just so physically impossible.
What would be the practical use in being able to look at somebody whilst I'm talking to them on the phone? You know, that sounds distracting. I could be on the phone and I can get stuff done. You know, I can go about, I can do the dishes, I could cook dinner, I could do all that. I don't have to stare at a screen. You know, it doesn't seem practical.
You talking about doing the dishes on video phone reminds me of doing uni during college. Like, everybody had their cameras off in every single class, apart from one guy who really liked to do the dishes while he was in a class, and you could just watch him clean up his dishes for like half an hour every week.
That's great. I respect that. That's brilliant. That is fantastic. But yeah, when I was at uni, and this is a very funny story, my flatmate and we were in the same course, and there was one time we went to uni through the pandemic, so it was basically all online, which meant moving across the country was a complete waste of time and money. But I'm glad I did it. It was cool. So we were on Zoom, and as you said, everybody had their cameras off and their mics muted, and that's what I did. You know, went through the class. It was whatever. My flatmate did the same thing. He was in the same class, camera off, mic muted. Mm-hmm. Class ends. Everybody leaves. He's still there. He's still in the call. He doesn't leave the call, and the professor's like, "What the fuck is going on? Why are you still here, Ewan?" And then it turns out he joined the call, went back to bed. He fell asleep. So the class ended, and he was dead asleep. And our professor figured this out, and he sent me an email being like, "Give him shit. Give him shit. You can mock him for this."
Oh, I shouldn't admit this, but I almost did stuff like that, you know, like I would just leave a laptop on mute, and like, you know, sometimes it was like a really boring lecture you don't want to be listened to. It's fair, I think, if it's recorded especially, like, you know, uni during the pandemic was wild. It's so weird.
It was miserable. It was so miserable. I think it completely killed my uni experience. I absolutely fucking hated it. But yeah, that was a long time ago now. But they see, and we go through the phone back into the episode where we see Smythe staring back at the Doctor, and also Cyclops from X-Men is there. He's just staring. Really, I love his big shades. They are the most 60s sci-fi thing ever. It's very goofy, but I enjoy it. And then the rest of the episode is legitimately boring as fuck. I struggle to recall what happens after this, because this feels like the last major plot point before they just escape.
Yeah,
because the rest of it is just them trying to escape, really, isn't it?
Yeah, they try to leave a building, and then they're greeted with two men with guns, which happens every time they try to leave a room in these first two episodes. Yeah. Like, it's happened like 5
It
times
does happen
already.
it consistently. That's the same repeated dramatic sting of let's leave. Oh shit. Oh, let's leave. Oh shit. Yeah. But they do manage to get their way out, and then goddamn, what's his name? I want to say Tom Jones now.
Toby Jones.
Tom Jones. He's Tom Jones. Tom Jones is here. And he's meeting with Smythe, and he's like, hey, they escaped and they've got into this car and we know where they're going. And Smythe is like, awesome, blow them up. Blow them up. Don't bother calling for help. Just simply blow them up with the bombs we have. And Toby Jones is like, he's back to being Toby now. He's like, whoa, I don't know if I morally am okay with doing that. And then, of course, Smythe puts on his glasses, as we've seen him do how many times now? 5? 6?
It's got to be like
7?
7 times.
It's so, like, every scene he's in, he will find a way to stick on his glasses and hypnotize somebody. It is tiresome, but he hypnotizes him to send off the missiles, which he does, and they start bombarding towards the van that they're driving away in, until that van disappears completely flawlessly into the mist, which, you know, we've been set up. I think there's either an issue with scripting here, or the actor flubbed and changed his line, because they call it fog, when really I think it would be more impactful for us as an audience if it's like, it's mist, there's mist everywhere, because you set up previously when you were talking about what's going on by saying the mist, did you see the mist? I remember mist, like multiple characters call it mist, and then it happens to our main characters and they're like, oh, the fog, there's fog everywhere.
I mean, they are the same thing at the end of the day, aren't they?
They are, but like, I'm just meaning from like a dialogue choice, it's more impactful to say mist than it is to say fog. Like, you're communicating the same thing, but it's more emotionally resonant if you say mist, because you'll make that connection faster in your brain, you know.
And this is the part of the episode that just is where I'm like, oh yeah, it's fucking Westworld. They predicted Westworld like 10 years before the movie Westworld came out.
I have never seen the TV show nor the movie Westworld.
The movie is a fun
the most
time.
I know about it is it's robots that like have sex a lot, and then they're like, what if I'm real?
The movie is pretty groovy. It's like a 70s movie that was shot by the guy who wrote Jurassic Park, and he also wrote the movie as well. So he wrote and directed the movie, and it's a pretty decent movie. They shot it in like a month, which you can tell it's a rushed production. Yeah. The TV show was really fucking good. Season 1 was incredible. Season 2 does that thing where they want to make the story seem more complicated by telling the story out of order, and you can tell that they're running out of steam. And when Season 3 is I think it's the one where Aaron Paul from Breaking Bad comes in. I haven't seen it, and it got cancelled, and then HBO just removes it from their streaming service entirely. Like, it was one of their biggest shows for a while, next to Game of Thrones.
Yeah, it was.
Now it's completely gone. Now it's completely gone,
insane.
and yeah, it's. Warner Brothers, what the fuck are they doing?
I'm sure you could pirate it. That's one of the cases where pirating is a-okay. When they make it impossible to get, impossible to watch. Fucking
I believe Tubi got the rights to it, and Tubi is like a brilliant service in America. It's completely free, and you can watch most of Classic Who on it. Like, they have 26 seasons of Classic Who. They have a bunch of shows and movies that are kind of like unknown, but they're really solid. It's a really good service. It's great.
But the van emerges from the mist and running towards them up from a hill. Oh my god, it's Roman soldiers. And you know, the only thing I was thinking about was, it's like the Doctor Who movie when he opened the door.
Yes.
There's the giant Roman soldiers running at him.
Yes, I wrote in my notes, talk about the Dalek movie, because I'm going to ask you the question, which cliffhanger is better, this cliffhanger
Oh my god.
or the cliffhanger to the Dalek movie where they're like 10 feet tall and running towards the targets?
That's the Dalek movie is the better one. one because it's more absurd, because their proportions are so wrong.
Yeah.
And they are so big. They are the biggest men to ever exist. It's so funny and it's entertaining. Whereas this one, they're just running and they're running and then they're running. It's like that. It's like the GIF of the van that's gonna crash into the pole. And it never does, you know, it's constantly like, whoa, 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 and that's what this is. They just keep running for ages and ages and ages and ages and ages, and then the episode ends. I was like, Jesus Christ, there's a reason I didn't remember this was the cliffhanger, and I watched this episode today, you know?
Yeah, one of the major things in the cliffhanger is they can't start the ambulance back up again, so there's a moment of terror, which apparently wasn't even in the original script. There was no struggle with the ambulance, and that's like one of the things that makes an iconic cliffhanger where you can't get away. Like, why wouldn't that be in the script? It's bizarre. Not the best cliffhanger, let's just say, but one thing is the music changes. I think there's like 7 or 8 different types of music cues that gets played throughout the storyline, depending on like the time zones or where you are in the world, which really works because sometimes you're in like a sci-fi landscape where everything's all like crazy and stuff, and the music is one type, and when you go back to like the Romans and it's a different type and it's jarring, it takes a moment to register that you're watching the same thing even. Which it really works in the future. It doesn't. It works fine here, but it's cool. It's a cool choice. The music itself is. I don't like the music that much, but it's fine.
It didn't bother me. I didn't think it was particularly memorable as far as like soundtracks go, but it wasn't like glaringly bad either. It was just forgettable.
For me, it's a bit too repetitive. It's the same cue that gets played like 18 different times throughout these 2 episodes.
but you know, repetitive sound like motifs don't bother me. I'm like, cool, whatever, I get it. It's the big problem you have with the Matt Smith era. Doesn't bother me. I love it every time. Love it every time. I was actually having a conversation. I was round at a friend's house and we were watching Doctor Who. And he turned to me and he said to me, he's like, one thing, he's never seen Doctor Who before. He's going through it for the first time. He's on the Matt Smith era. And he said to me, he was like, you know, one of the things that I'm really liking about the Matt Smith era more than the David Tennant era is the music is so much better.
Interesting.
And I was like, yeah, you're right.
Because, you know, to me, the best music is probably like Series 4. I like the music in Series 4 better than, but you know, different tastes.
Yeah, it's just, it's that...
It's okay to be wrong.
I thought it was an interesting opinion, and you know what? I don't disagree. It's pretty good. It's fine. But that is the end of episode 2 of the War Games. A mediocre episode where basically nothing happens. I am enjoying the setup to this story. I think I've basically got most of the story figured out in my head. I will see if I am correct as we watch on. I have a lot of theories floating around that I'm not 100% confident enough to float them out yet, but we shall see. I don't know how much of that is tainted just from my not like watching Regenerations as a kid and like, you know, getting the basic plotline outlined and being like, oh, I remember that, but then like thinking it's an original thought. But I am enjoying this story enough. I do not like these first 2 episodes.
Yeah,
I think they are boring. I think these are boring episodes, but maybe it'll be worth it.
Yes, I completely agree with you on these 2 episodes. I think they're the worst 2 episodes of a set. The next few episodes are incredible in my opinion. Once you get more into the sci-fi stuff, it's just pure 60s sci-fi, which I love. But so far, I'm not too keen on these 2 parts. You know, it's the parts where the repetition is most obvious, and you can tell that we're just, you know, spinning our wheels until
it's nothing's
until the
happening.
cliffhanger. Yeah, but you know, we've seen worse episodes. We just did a worse episode of Dragonfire.
Things could always be worse. So. But thank you very much for listening if you made it this far into the episode. If you are watching us on YouTube at youtube.com/@whowatcheswhopod, where you can find us in video form, you can hit the subscribe button, please. Hit the like button. It really helps out the podcast. And we are also available in audio form everywhere you get podcasts. We're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. There's an RSS link that you can plug into your podcast app of choice if that's how you prefer to do things. We are everywhere, and we appreciate every single download. Thank you very much. We have a Facebook page, Who Watches Who. We have some plans to revamp our Facebook presence a little bit, mainly because we discussed it once earlier this week, and nobody else, we haven't done anything about it, but there is an idea that I think it would be solid if we can actually bother to do it, because we are 40-year-old men apparently who use Facebook. I don't really use Facebook, but it's the best, I think, for podcast communities. Maybe Reddit's pretty good as well.
Oh yeah, we did we did talk about it. Now I remember.
Yeah. Nice to know you pay attention. We're also on X at Watches Doctor, and there's a bunch of other stuff as well. I'm sure there's a bunch of links in the description. You can follow us on Letterboxd. You can follow my gaming channel, Psychedelic Gaming Hobos. Other than that, thank you very, very much, and we will leave you till next week when we look at War Games episodes 3 and 4. Until then, bye-bye.
Bye.